We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The video started shaky, like it had been filmed in the middle of drunken laughter. Then it steadied just enough to capture her, my wife, Madison Cole. She wasn't surrounded by girlfriends, like she claimed in her text earlier. She was wrapped around a man I didn't know, kissing him like he was her whole world. The clip ended in a blur of voices and music, and for a long moment, I just stood there in our apartment, staring at the phone screen. It hadn't even come from Madison. It came from Emily, her closest friend, who must have missent it to me. By accident, or maybe fate, I've been handed the truth raw and unfiltered. My name is Jack Turner. For years, I believed in the marriage Madison and I had built. The weekend trips, the Sunday breakfasts, the promises whispered late at night. She always had this way of convincing me she was mine and mine alone. But that 30-second video burned away every illusion. Friday nights were always hers. Girls' nights, she called them. She'd put on a black dress, spritz on perfume sharp enough to hang in the air until morning, and kiss me on the cheek before disappearing into the city. I thought I was giving her space, being the trusting husband. Instead, I was just handing her the freedom to betray me. I didn't scream, didn't even call her. Something colder settled over me instead, like clarity after a storm. I went to the bedroom, pulled down her luggage, and began packing. Not carelessly, not in a fit of rage. Every blouse, every pair of heels, every carefully folded dress went neatly into the bags. It felt like erasing her from the home we'd shared. By the time I zipped the last suitcase, the apartment was quieter than it had ever been. No trace of her lingered, except the memories I no longer wanted. I hauled the bags down to the lobby. Richard, the concierge, looked up in surprise. Heading out of town, Mr. Turner? I set the suitcases beside his desk. Not me. Madison. She'll be back in the morning. Don't let her upstairs. These are waiting for her. Richard's brows knitted, but something in my tone stopped him from asking questions. He simply nodded. Understood. When the elevator carried me back up, I poured a glass of bourbon and sat in silence. The city outside still buzzed with life, but in here, everything was hollow. Madison thought she could slip back in unnoticed, laugh off her lies, and keep me in the dark. But tomorrow, when she dragged herself home, there would be no warm welcome. Just 2 suitcases, a locked door, and the shattering weight of humiliation. The sun was barely up when I heard the elevator chime in the hallway outside. I'd been awake all night, staring at the skyline, the empty whiskey glass still sitting untouched beside me. My chest was calm, not raging, not aching, just steady like a man who had already made his decision. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for, heels clacking against the floor, growing louder with each step. Madison. Keys jingled, sliding into the lock. The knob twisted once, twice, then stopped. The door didn't move. Her muffled sigh followed. Jack, something's wrong with the lock. I didn't answer. She tried again, harder this time. The sound of metal grinding against the chain echoed through the apartment. Jack, open the door. Why isn't this working? I took a sip of cold coffee and let the silence grow. Finally, there was a pause. Then a knock, sharp and impatient. Jack, come on. Quit playing. I'm exhausted. Just let me in. I stood quietly on the other side, leaning against the wall. Her voice sounded different, less confident, more fragile. The kind of fragility that creeps in when someone realizes their control is slipping. Moments later, Richard's voice drifted from the lobby downstairs. Miss Cole, your bags are here. The air in the hallway shifted. I could almost hear her breath hitch. My bags? She asked, her voice cracking on the word. Yes, Richard said firmly. Mr. Turner asked me to leave them for you. He said you'd need them this morning. A stunned silence followed. Then the quick shuffle of her heels against the floor as she dragged one of the suitcases closer. She pounded on the door, desperation laced in every strike. Jack, what the hell is this? Why are my bags downstairs? Open this door right now. Her anger made me smirk bitterly. I finally stepped close enough for my voice to cut through. You should know why, Madison. The pounding stopped. Then, a shaky exhale. You saw something. I slid my phone against the door, tapping play on the video. Her own laughter filtered through the speaker, followed by the sound of her kissing that stranger. I knew she could hear it as clearly as I could. Her voice broke. Jack, it wasn't what it looked like. Please, you have to believe me. I was drunk. It was stupid, meaningless. Meaningless. My tone was razor sharp. That's what you call kissing another man while telling me you were out with friends? That's what you call lying straight to my face. Her fist hit the door again, weaker this time. I made a mistake. Please don't do this. Don't throw everything away over one stupid night. One night. My laugh was humorless. Madison, don't insult me. That wasn't the first time. That video didn't just show a slip-up. It showed a routine. She fell silent, and that silence said more than any excuse could. Finally, she whispered, "Where am I supposed to go?" "Anywhere but here." I replied coldly. "This apartment isn't your home anymore. You made that choice last night." Her voice wavered, breaking under the weight of humiliation. "Please, Jack, let me explain. I'll fix this. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't leave me out here." Neighbors' doors creaked open. Curious eyes peeked from cracked doorways. Whispers drifted through the hall. Madison, the woman who always strutted with confidence, was reduced to a trembling mess in front of strangers. I didn't open the door. I let the whispers sting her pride. I let the weight of her choices crash down. After minutes that stretched like hours, the sound of suitcase wheels scraped against the floor. She was dragging them toward the elevator, her sobs echoing in the hall. I sank into the couch, closing my eyes. For the first time in years, I felt something strange, relief. But I wasn't finished. This wasn't just about sending her away. Madison had built a life on appearances, her reputation, her image, her belief that she was untouchable. And if she thought a locked door was the end of my revenge, she hadn't seen anything yet. Because I wasn't going to raise my voice or seek chaos. I was going to let the truth unravel her slowly, piece by piece, until there was nothing left for her to hide behind. And the best part, she wouldn't even see it coming. The apartment was still, almost unnervingly quiet after Madison's sobs faded down the hallway. I sat there with my coffee, staring at the framed photos we'd taken over the years. Trips to Colorado, a weekend in Miami, dinners where we laughed until midnight. All of it staged, all of it framed lies. But the truth was, Madison's betrayal hadn't come out of nowhere. It was the culmination of small fractures that I had ignored. Fractures she'd covered with charm and empty affection. Our mornings used to begin with sunlight spilling into the kitchen. I'd brew the coffee, and she'd glide in wearing silk robes, pretending she had all the time in the world before rushing off. She'd kiss me lightly on the cheek, but her phone was always in her hand, buzzing with messages. I used to think it was her friends, maybe work. Now I knew better. Those weren't good morning texts from girlfriends. They were little signals of her double life. Evenings weren't much different. I worked late, managing construction projects that demanded more hours than I wanted to give. When I got home, she'd already eaten, already showered, already tucked herself away in her own little world. She'd tell me, "Oh, you missed dinner. Sorry, babe," but her eyes never met mine. I brushed it off, told myself I was being paranoid. But deep down I had known, and that's what stung most. I had given her my trust, even as the evidence piled higher every week. But now the scales have fallen. I decided revenge wasn't about yelling or dramatic confrontations. It was about precision, about reclaiming control over the life she had turned into a lie. The first step was financial. Madison loved the lifestyle, brunches at trendy spots, designer clothes she flaunted, memberships to spas where she could spend entire afternoons. But she'd never touched the accounts. I was the one who handled every bill, every savings transfer, every credit card. That morning, I logged in and began quietly rerouting everything. Her cards, canceled. Her phone plan, suspended. The joint account she relied on, emptied into a private one she couldn't touch. By the time Madison realized what had happened, she'd be standing in a boutique with her card declined, or staring at a phone that no longer connected. She had built her world on my work and my money, and I was cutting her off at the root. The second step was reputation. Madison thrived on perception. She was always the life of the party, the perfect wife when friends were around, the woman others envied. She believed her image was bulletproof. But now I held the video. Proof. I didn't send it to anyone yet. I didn't need to. The fear of exposure would gnaw at her. I knew she would panic, wondering if her friends had seen it, if I'd sent it to her parents, if her co-workers would hear whispers. She wouldn't be able to control the narrative, and that uncertainty would eat her alive. As I planned, my phone lit up with message after message from her. "Jack, please. Let me in. We can talk." I didn't mean it. It was just stupid. "I love you. If you don't answer me, I'll come back tonight." I didn't respond. Silence was my weapon now. I left the apartment for the first time that morning, walking through the lobby. Richard gave me a cautious nod, as if he wanted to ask what had happened, but knew better. Madison wasn't there. She must have slunk off with her bags, too ashamed to stay in the building where everyone had heard her begging. On the street, the city was alive with noise. Horns blared, people rushed past with coffee cups, and yet I felt like I was walking through it all with a shield. Betrayal has a strange way of shifting perspective. The world no longer felt the same, but in that difference came clarity. I ducked into a small cafe I used to love before life got too busy. I ordered black coffee and sat by the window, notebook in hand. Not for work this time, for myself. I began listing every way Madison had chipped away at me. Every night, she left me waiting. Every time she rolled her eyes when I mentioned my long hours. Every time she dismissed my needs with a wave of her hand. I wrote it all down, not to wallow, but to remember. Because when she came crawling back, and I knew she would, I wanted to be ready. Ready to remind her that this wasn't just about one night or one kiss. It was about years of taking me for granted, of building a castle of lies and expecting me to live in it blindly. I wasn't going to scream those words at her. I was going to show her, through silence, through action, through a revenge so measured that she'd never see the end coming until it was already done. That night, I returned to an apartment that felt lighter without her presence. The bed was mine again. The silence was mine again. And for the first time in years, I realized I didn't miss her. I was already free. But Madison? Her punishment had only just begun. The week after I locked her out, Madison's desperation escalated. It started with texts, paragraphs that shifted between begging, blaming, and promising. When I didn't respond, she tried calling. When that failed, she showed up at my office. I remember walking into the lobby of my firm, only to see her standing there in oversized sunglasses, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The receptionist glanced at me nervously, as if unsure whether to intervene. "Jack," Madison said, her voice cracking. "Please, just talk to me for 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause a scene. I simply looked her in the eye and said, "You lost the right to 5 minutes when you decided someone else deserved them more." Then I walked past her, leaving her frozen in front of a dozen curious onlookers. That was the beginning of her unraveling. Her cards had already been canceled. Her phone plan disconnected. She called friends, but they weren't as sympathetic as she'd expected. Some had already heard whispers, maybe from Emily, maybe from neighbors who saw her breakdown in the hallway. In Madison's world, reputation was everything, and now hers was crumbling. At night, I still received messages, some of them frantic. "You can't just throw me away. I'll do anything. Please, don't ruin me. You don't understand. I made a mistake, but I still love you." But love isn't a word you can resurrect once it's been buried under lies. I knew what she really feared wasn't losing me. It was losing the image of being Mrs. Turner, the polished wife with the perfect life. So that's where my final move struck. There was an annual gala we always attended, hosted by her company. Madison had spent years parading me around there, showing off like I was another accessory in her collection. Invitations had gone out months before, and our names were printed neatly on the guest list. Jack Turner and Madison Cole Turner. I went alone. When I arrived, conversations buzzed, champagne glasses clinked, and the city's wealthiest mingled under crystal chandeliers. I didn't make a scene. I didn't hunt her down. Instead, I let people approach me. "Where's Madison?" they asked, their voices tinged with curiosity. I gave the same answer every time, calm and matter of fact. "She won't be coming. Ask Emily why." It didn't take long. Whispers traveled faster than champagne refills. Emily had been at that bar the night she filmed the video. She tried to contain it, but she wasn't ready for how quickly rumors spread in circles built on appearances. By the end of the night, people knew. Not every detail, but enough. Madison's kingdom of image had collapsed, and I never had to raise my voice. The next morning, she showed up at the apartment building again, mascara streaking her cheeks. Richard stopped her at the desk, as instructed. She shouted my name across the lobby, her voice echoing. I stepped out of the elevator, dressed for work, briefcase in hand. She looked at me like I was her last lifeline. "Jack, please, I'm begging you," she said, her voice raw. "We can fix this. I'll change, I cut her off with a steady voice. "No, Madison, you had everything, and you traded it for nothing. I don't need your promises anymore. I need my life back, and I've already taken it." The silence that followed was suffocating. People in the lobby pretended not to listen, but their eyes darted between us. Madison's pride, the one thing she'd clung to her whole life, shattered right there in front of strangers. She dropped her gaze, her shoulders caving in, and for the first time, I saw her not as my wife, not as the woman who had betrayed me, but as someone stripped bare of everything she thought made her powerful. She gathered her suitcases, and this time, she didn't argue. She walked out of the building, her heels clicking in defeat, the glass doors closing behind her. That was her real walk of shame. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Back upstairs, the apartment felt lighter, cleaner, like the air itself had shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in someone else's illusion. I was living in my truth. And while Madison's betrayal had left scars, my revenge had left me something far stronger: freedom. She thought she was untouchable. But in the end, silence, precision, and patience were louder than any fight. And as I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, watching the morning sun stretch across the city, I realized something. I didn't lose a wife that night. I lost a liar, and I gave myself back.